As one fit 32-year-old dad to another person, I guess. Here are 3 things you can do to really help you out to stay athletic, maybe kind of jacked, and feel better in your workouts as you get older. Now, when I was 18 and I worked out, I could basically do whatever I want. I could do all kinds of things and have no repercussions physically. As I've gotten older, there are more repercussions for what you do. I don't know what it is. It's just natural about how life goes and so on. But let me give you a little bit of advice. Number 1, maybe the most important thing is pick exercises that don't bother you. I think too often so many people try and fit themselves into the standards of what you should do based on what you see. Whether it's squat depth or a deadlift or how you do a bench press, everyone at some point in time has been told how to do something, especially in the weight room, and then maybe they hold that how to do something more as, you have to do it that way versus maybe how this is you should do that way. What's the Pirates of the Caribbean line? They're more like guidelines, not rules. When it comes to squatting, squat position, squat depth, bar placement, the number one thing, whether I'm working with myself, a professional athlete, or someone just learning to work out, it's do what feels best. Because what feels best is what your body can do best. That doesn't mean you don't want to work towards something. Maybe you would like to do a barbell back squat and you find it to be a fun challenge. Sure, awesome. But if you can't really barbell back squat that great and you can leg press really well, now these are 2 different exercises, yes, but they work similar muscles, yes. Maybe you still load the leg press, get stronger at it, so on and so forth, and learn the barbell back squat. And then when you've learned the barbell back squat and you can load it, maybe how you load it is based on comfort. Maybe you only go down to a certain depth that is comfortable for you. I've worked with athletes who will not squat deep at all. It bothers them, the hips, their knees. And guess what? In life, you really don't have a barbell on your back that many times unless you're in the weight room. And so to try and make the wild assumption that somehow squatting to depth and to a certain depth in a certain way is optimal for function, despite that function not functioning in life, that's kind of silly to me. So that's number 1. Do exercises that feel good to you. And maybe if you want to try and do something different, you want to learn a new exercise, wonderful, learn it, and then eventually load it. It's kind of 1.5, I suppose. Number 2 is actually get stronger. Sometimes you run into a situation where you like working out or you enjoy working out and you want to have certain goals, but you don't actually really get to any of those goals because the weights you lift are kind of the same weights you lifted last year. And the reality is most people, I shouldn't say most, there are times that come up when people don't actually focus on getting stronger. They think lifting the weight is somehow just going to be the only thing that stimulates adaptation. Yet they don't consider, when you say the weight, what that weight is and what kind of message it's sending to the body. And what I mean by that, people sometimes get so caught up in thinking I must do 3x10 or 3x12 that they just do 3x10 and 3x12, but that 3x10 or 3x12 isn't enough intensity to actually evoke any sort of adaptation. So what I would really encourage people is to think about getting stronger, and the way you can get stronger, because I'll help you guys out, is you can think about rep maxes. How much weight can you lift at a certain rep range? Maybe on a bench press, I have a 3 rep max, I have a 5 rep max, I have an 8 rep max, and a 12 rep max. Well, I don't need to every single workout get better at my 3 rep max. I can do 185 pounds for 3 times. Oh, next time, do I need to do 190? Well, that gets a little redundant and monotonous. Well, maybe you try and beat your 12 rep max, or maybe every 2 weeks you try and see where your max is at, or there's some form of programming, which I'm alluding to here, that forces you to go to an intensity that challenges yourself near that end of the rep max range, 8, 9, 10, 11, if we're going to a 12 rep max. And eventually you go past that and then you up the weight. Or you have the same weight and you do more reps. And it sounds so silly and everyone's like, duh, Max, that's the whole point of lifting. But the real trick to this is, in my opinion, is focusing on beating certain rep ranges, 5, 3, 6, 7, whatever it might be, and counting every victory as a victory. Too often people get regimented and they want to go up 10 pounds at a 3x5. And that is just not how it works. Not all 3 sets of 5 reps are going to be 5 or 10 pounds heavier than last week. You might only get 1 set that's a little bit heavier. And if you did 1 set that's heavier than last week, that is progress. Progressive overload doesn't care what form it comes in as long as progressive overload. So having some sort of program that involves challenging yourself near the end ranges of those rep maxes, but also at the same time, having variety in what rep max ranges you're working in seems to be really beneficial. Number 3, okay, is going to be, how do I put this properly? If you're wanting to build muscle mass, and this kind of goes maybe to a younger group, and you're wanting to add some weight to yourself, realizing that it's not just the weight room, but your diet that plays a role. And what I mean by that is twofold, and this is why I prefaced it kind of slowly, is that some people sometimes will want to lose weight in the weight room. They'll train and they'll exercise in a caloric deficit, and in doing so, they're trying to lose weight, and that's totally fine. But the food you consume, more times than not, is going to be the reason why you're in a caloric deficit versus the weight room. And a lot of times people want to build muscle mass, but they don't eat in a caloric surplus. So you might be doing all the right workouts, but you're not even eating enough to provide yourself with the right kind of nutrient base to cause growth. I guess you're causing growth, but to not foster the development. You just don't have enough supplies to build a big enough house. And so our nutrition and outside of the weight room has to be kind of geared towards what we're trying to accomplish. Trying to build muscle mass and work out a ton at the same time eating in a massive caloric deficit doesn't really work horrendously well, in my opinion. There is some research saying you can build muscle while you are in a caloric deficit. I do believe, don't quote me on it, go read it yourself, but it's not optimal. I will throw in a bonus 4th, by the way, for those people like myself who want to be athletic and keep moving, is if you don't use it, you lose it. So let's wrap up number 3. Number 3 is the nutrition and the food you consume is going to have to fit or at least be in somewhat parallel to your weight room goals, eating more or less, depending if you're trying to build muscle, just mass and cultivating mass, or if we're trying to lose mass. Number 4, use it or lose it. If you haven't ran in a while and you go and run, you have to treat it like you haven't ran in a while and you're going to run, not I used to run 5Ks, I haven't ran in 2 years, now I'm going to run a 5K. That is a recipe to get into lots of aches and pains. At the same thing, when the same kind of thread of thought, as I don't lose my own thought here, we want to consider ourselves ready to do things relative to how we do things. So if you want to get back into jumping, running, and sprinting, and you have not jumped and ran and sprint, but you know it's important to get back into it, just doing 0.1% more or 1% more than what you have been doing, going from A to B, then B to C, is kind of the proper way of progressing. I haven't sprinted before or haven't jogged in a while. So instead of going straight to sprinting, maybe you just jog, and then maybe the next week you jog a little bit faster, and the next week you jog, and a couple of those steps are near high intensity. Next thing you know, you're kind of sprinting. So what you do is what prepares you. So just because you've been lifting and doing all the weight room stuff doesn't mean you're actually fully capable of sprinting repeatedly over and over again because you haven't been doing that. Same thing is if you keep doing it, you don't have to try and rebuild it. So even if it's once a week or twice a week, jumping, running, doing explosive things is a wonderful way to maintain that athletic ability. I really, really do believe that the best way to stay in shape is to not get out of shape. And one of the best ways to stay athletic and active is to continue to do athletic and active things. So when you look at your workout and you say, oh my goodness, my week has been lots of lifting, lots of pump and iron, but I haven't done any running and stuff, meaning maybe lateral change of direction, some hops, some skips. Maybe I can find 1 to 2 days where I can add that stuff in. Complementary movements, It doesn't always have to be a sprint, it doesn't always have to be a jump. It can be hops, it can be skips, it can be jump ropes, jumping onto a box, chasing something, playing frisbee. Just doing something that uses those impact-based athletic qualities where you run, hit the ground, and have to keep moving. That's going to allow you to maintain your athleticism in a way that if you just didn't do any of that, would probably drop off pretty quick. So I said originally 3 at the start of the video. It's actually 4 things that I hope you guys find pretty helpful. So appreciate y'all. We'll get into more of these later on.